Okay, this is a video response being done for the third time because I keep making it too long, to Dave's video on right and wrong. And I'm going to be very geeky and quote Star Wars. In Star Wars Episode 3, Star Wars 3, Return of the Jedi. No, Star Wars 6, Return of the Jedi. Obi-Wan Kenobi turns around to Luke Skywalker and says, "Many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view." That is very true. If you think about it, it's very true. People argue that morality comes from religion, it comes from God. I would actually argue the opposite. I'd say it comes from human beings. I believe that societies and culture decide what is morally acceptable. Let's see. To the Incas, take back time, human sacrifice was perfectly acceptable. It was practiced on a regular basis and was deemed to be fine. To the Christians that came over at the same time when this was happening, thought, "What the hell?" That was very overdramatic, but there we go. They viewed it as wrong. And you can argue, was it wrong? Because the people that would human sacrifice tended to go willingly. They weren't dragged kicking and screaming and just said, some of these people honestly viewed it as an honour to be chosen to be sacrificed. I'm not saying all of them were. A lot of them would have been captured soldiers or captured enemies. But there we go. You can argue, and you'd have to find a very convincing argument in favour of human sacrifice. But I imagine there's more than one person that could. Slavery is another one, but something that Dave touched up on. 400 years ago, it was considered perfectly acceptable to keep slaves, to treat them appallingly. Slavery is a practice that has been going on for centuries. Even the Bible at one point, I believe, actually allowed it. Yes, I'm sure in the Bible, I think they've even quoted it, is that their people should be sold as slaves. So even Christianity advocated slavery. And then because some people had the opinion that black people are somehow a sub-race of human because they're not white, that they became the handy slave generation, but society today views slavery, and rightly so. But again, I say rightly so because I believe that it's wrong. That it is wrong. But if I was to speak to, say, someone from the 18th century, they would argue that it's right. Because it's society that shapes our moral structure. It's society that shapes what we view as acceptable. Take sexuality again. Sexuality is, because of the influence of the Abrahamic religions, things like homosexuality have been viewed as very, very wrong. It's not since, I'd say pretty much from the 1960s when we had the sexual revolution, that people's attitudes towards homosexuality have changed. But it's come full circle. Now again, it's accepted, it's allowed. At least by most everyday people who use something called common sense, which, let's face it, most politicians and most church leaders of most religions have a severe lack of. It's now by many people today to be fine to be gay, to be fine to have gay sex. So many of these people that turn around and go, "Oh no, you can't be gay, you're not allowed to be gay, you're not allowed to be gay." I bet there's more than one that have had a quick play with the old, bash the old bishop to lesbians. But that's just a little bit of hypocrisy that we won't go into. So it's perfectly allowed now. It's acceptable now. It's not viewed as this thing that's horribly wrong. And it's not horribly wrong. But again, if you brought someone, even from, say, 100 years ago, from 1908, if you brought somebody up on it, they'd say, "No, you're not allowed to do that. That's wrong. It goes against God, blah, 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 blah." And you bring it back to Victorian times, where, Victorian times was almost paradoxical in the way it carried... Hello, dog. Victorian times was almost... Come down. Victorian times was almost paradoxical in the way it carried on, because on the one side they viewed sex as something that you did purely for procreation. You weren't allowed to enjoy it. Well, the men were, the women weren't. You weren't allowed to enjoy it. Would you keep your head down? She's fighting to stay up. It's very hard to talk round your nose. There we go. You know, it was viewed as okay, but in the same way, Victorian era did have a very much an underside of. Okay, I'm scratching your chin. It did have very much an underside of almost hedonism, of active, blatant hedonism. So there we go. So it's. I feel that society views changes how we view things. I mean, the death penalty. I mean, though the death penalty debate still rages here, there, and everywhere, the death penalty debate. I mean, 100 years ago, perfectly acceptable to put a multiple murderer to death. Perfectly acceptable. Not a problem. They'd hang him in the village square in public. I mean, it wasn't until much later on. I think it was only until the 19th century that they actually stopped public executions being public. You know, it was like the Saturday treat. You know, you'd buy yourself an apple and you'd go watch the local disembowelment. There we go. So it's society that shapes how we feel about what is socially and morally acceptable. And I'm probably running out of time again, and I don't want to have to record this for a third time, so I'm going to say doodle beep. Okay, I've actually got about another 2 minutes, so one of the other topics I'd like to bring up concerning, right, and I've just got rid of you, is euthanasia. I mean, the idea that we will judge ourselves as morally superior because we would not allow someone who wants to, who is in full control of their faculties, but whose body is condemning them to a very slow, painful and humiliating death. We won't grant them, and you carry won't. We won't grant them the right to die with dignity, to die in a manner they see fit. You know, if a dog was going through what some people go through, we'd put it down as a mercy. I mean, and it seems to me that we consider ourselves morally superior. You know, that it is a mark of great civilization that we will keep a person doped up to the eyeballs with no quality of life and not allow them to die when that's what they want. You know, I mean, if you actually assist somebody to die when they genuinely want to die, you can get in real trouble for it. You know, you go down for murder. So we'll put a dog down who's in pain and you know, we'll put a dog down, but we seem to have some kind of moral justification that says we won't put a human down. You know, we won't allow a human being to die. You know, the powers that be, who are obviously, you know, greater than me, seem to think that's right. I personally think it's barbaric. But there we go.